to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Lawyers for the family of a Michigan man fatally shot by police say an independent autopsy confirms what seems to be clear on video.
An independent autopsy confirms that 26-year-old Patrick Lyoya was fatally shot in the head by a Grand Rapids police officer April 4th. After Lyoya is seen from multiple video angles, non-cooperative, resisting, fleeing, and later fighting the officer, who for about a minute is heard demanding Lyoya let go and later drop the officer's police-issued taser in what Grand Rapids police have called a tragedy.
I call it a deadly execution because I believe that it was so unnecessary.
Lyoya family attorney Ben Crump as the investigation and protests over the shooting play out. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The actor known for playing The Flash is arrested again in Hawaii. Police say that Ezra Miller faces an assault charge after he became irate when he was asked to leave a home. He threw a chair, hit a woman in the head. It's Miller's second arrest in Hawaii in recent weeks. And a football legend is overcoming his own fears to help save lives.
Jerry Rice is teaming up with the American Red Cross for a new public service announcement advocating for blood donations to help save lives. The Football Hall of Famer emphasizing the importance of these donations, even if it means overcoming your fears with the aid of trained nurses.
They can hold your hand. They can sort of get you through it because as a macho football player, I was always afraid of needles.
Rice's trypanophobia not stopping his push to ramp up donations, which are down 10% from the start of the COVID pandemic. By the way, anyone who donates blood, platelets, or plasma between now and May 19th is eligible to win a travel trailer camper from Suburban Propane, plus a $10 e-gift card to a merchant of choice. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And Dow futures down 51 points at this hour. I'm Carmen Roberts. This is Fox News.
Hafa. I'm the owner of Guam's largest tourist attraction group. The pandemic's been very tough for all of us, and particularly for my team members. So I'm really appreciative and grateful for the PUA assistance to our team members, and more recently, the SVOG federal grant that allowed us to reopen these facilities and re-employ everyone at a critical time when PUA ended. From myself and my team, on behalf of all of us, thank you for the federal funds that allowed us to reopen.
The federal fund you provide saved many jobs. Thank you so much.
We employ about 35 technicians for our shows. Thank you for the federal funds. It kept us going.
Thank you for helping with the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for helping to save our jobs.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. For those good branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Hey, what did the grilled cheese sandwich say to their date?
What'd they say?
You make me melt.
Oh, so cheesy.
But not as cheesy as Subway's latest Eat Fresh, Refresh menu innovation. The new Fresh Melts with 3 times the cheese. Fresh Melts are the cheese lovers' holy grail. Fresh Melts combine freshly baked breads and your favorite meats topped with a triple load of cheese. All grilled to warm, toasty perfection. Try the ham and cheese melt, tuna melt, or steak and cheese melt to start. Best of all, you can make any footlong into a fresh melt. At Subway, eat fresh.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So here we go on another exciting episode of Tall Tales. Let's start out with Zemi Ikotny. So here's the editorial in the Daily News today. Our view, Orda Chalanpago putting solid waste money to good use. I think they probably were listening to Tall Tales yesterday, because that's exactly what I said. And it says leaders in Orda Chalanpago. How about the mayor of Orda Chalanpago? Mayor Jesse Gogui, the mayor of Orda Chalanpago, used foresight and planning when he decided to save the money the village receives each year as the host community for the now closed Orda dump. The village will soon complete the final plans for a 30,000 square foot gymnasium and multi-purpose center. By saving its payments, the village was able to accumulate $1.2 million by 2020, part of which was used for a new $468,000 office for the mayor, a $3.5 million grant from the military, and a $2.7 million grant from the Department of Interior, combined with a $2.66 million federal loan, will be used for the multi-purpose center project. The center will benefit the community for years to come. In addition, the facility will have training rooms, a vending area, a laundry area, and will serve as an emergency shelter. The $150,000 annual payments collected from Guam solid waste fees help provide Orda Chalanpago with something nice for residents. After all, Orda Chalanpago has provided the rest of the island with a site for a once smoldering dump, the local equivalent of a volcano. The village of Inalahan, home of the Ladzon landfill, also receives money for hosting a solid waste site. Under the 2010 law that authorized the payments, village municipal planning councils are responsible for determining how the money is spent. But it's not yet clear how the village of Inalahan spent the money. Mayor Anthony Chargaloff took office in 2021, said there was just over $100,000 in the account when he got there, and the records have been with the public auditor since that time. Public Utility Commission documents show that some of the money has been used to give annual Christmas bonuses of at least $100 to the mayor's staff. Money has been used for prizes for decorating contests. Chargaloff said the money that is currently in the account is being spent on village beautification, including purchasing a truck to help collect white goods. The villages are stuck with problems that come with dump sites, and solid waste customers are compensating them for those problems. Over $4 a month for residential customers. Orda Chalanpago is to be congratulated on using the money to make the community a more attractive place to use. I covered this yesterday on the card, One Man's Trash is Another Man's Treasure. All right. I got a couple of announcements here before I get into the card. First announcement, Once a Marine, Always a Marine picnic is going to be in Agate this Sunday, April 23rd. It's going to be the Agate Sagan Bisita next to the mayor's office. It's going to run from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it's a gathering of every Marine on the island here, taking into consideration that we don't really think there's such a thing as an ex-Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. So all Marines here in the island, active duty Marines, retired Marines, 4 for the Corps Marines, Marine Corps Reserve members, spouses, fellow travelers, etc., are welcome to come to this picnic on Saturday in Agate. I'll be there myself. I hope to see as many of you fellow jarheads as can make it. The other announcement is this, that this Sunday's forum in the Daily News is an extremely important forum. And the title of the forum is going to be, let's see, the Pacific Daily News Sunday Forum question for this week is, quote, should the Guam Heartbeat Act of 2022 become public law? And if you want to write in, I think you have to have your letter in by, let's see here. By Friday afternoon, by COB Friday. And you'd mail it to voice@guampdn.com. So let's see if we can, the other side is going to kind of mail bank this. You know that there will be a half dozen Scriveners circulating their stuff around for signatures, just like what we saw in the Daily News. So let's hope we have a good response on that. Going on to the card, I really got a thin card today. A good card, but a thin one. So this will be one of those days where if you have a question that's been haunting you for months, you say, I'd really like to talk about this on Tall Tales, but I know Bob always has a full card. Well, today will be the day. 671-888-TALK. Jose will get you on in the green room, and I will see to it that you get a chance to talk to our entire international radio listening audience. Doesn't get any better than that. And of course, Facebookers know that you can always post a comment on Facebook. We've got several already. Yeah, Brendan Fostum, welcome familiars, Tall Tales, Marine Corps. That's a good combination. Okay, so here's the card such as it is. Of course, I got to start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism, which is still going strong in our community. I've got Guam Board of Medical Examiners versus Pasa Tiempo. I guess they decided to take this case because up until this time, they'd just been passing time.
Sounds like a dance.
Dr. Pasa Tiempo. Yeah. All right, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Chris trying to override the veto on Bill 11. And that may get into his Tall Tales versus KBJ, USA Today versus Nature, etc. I think the key on the really interesting thing on the card, though, is going to be Sabrina versus Tony.
Wait, would that be the two lieutenant governors running for office?
Exactly. Lieutenant governor versus lieutenant governor.
Isn't there a third one?
A third one?
Oh, never mind.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, he will be collateral damage in this item on the card.
I see your wisdom.
Yeah. Okay, so systemic racism, not too much to say. I think everybody understands the dichotomy between the truth and the facts on the one hand and the narrative on the other. And Paul so clearly demonstrated the difference when he said, that rice that's always served at fiestas that you guys all call red rice, it ain't red. It's orange. And the Daily News came roaring back with this headline, Readers to Zerzan, leave our red rice alone. So the narrative is that rice that you see at every fiesta, it's not orange, it's red. You don't have to be colorblind to come up with that. You just have to understand the narrative. And once the narrative's in place, woe be to the person who comes along and tries to contradict it. Okay, next on the card, as usual, is my critique of the ineptitude of government agencies that cannot comply with 36-34 when they publish the notices of their meetings. Every meeting of a board or commission has to have two notices in the newspaper, one a week in advance, 2 days in advance, and they have to put the agenda of the meeting in their notice, and the agenda has to be of sufficient detail to put the reader on notice as to what's going to be discussed. You foul up one aspect of your notice, and anything you do at that meeting is void. So I'm going to start out here with one that needs a little work. Workman's comp. The Department of Labor will be conducting a Workers' Compensation Commission board meeting Thursday, April 28, etc., 2 p.m., GCI building, 8th floor conference room. The meeting will be accessible via the link below for Zoom video conferencing and will be live streamed on the Guam Department of Labor's YouTube channel. Agenda will be made available at the hearing. No, you can't do that.
You know the reason why they got it wrong.
Ah.
They got rid of their tall tale listener, Paul Zerzan.
That's right. Since Paul's not there, there's nobody who knows what's going on anymore. True enough. Yeah, so this is probably as wrong as anything I've seen. You know, you might as well put a confession. We confess that we don't know what the law is, and we don't care, and we understand that whatever action we take at that meeting is void. So anybody who has a workman's comp hearing before a hearing officer whose relief is denied, here's your ticket to a rehearing right here. All you got to do is say, you didn't have a hearing because you didn't notice it up. So let's do it again and let's do it right. Then, of course, we have the usual offender here, the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority Board of Trustees meeting. So they start out, item number 1, call to order. Item number 2, executive session. Now, I can make a pretty good argument that if you're going to have an executive session, you've got to tell what you're going to deal with in the executive session. Now, you can be a little bit cute and not disclose any confidentiality, but you can't just say executive session and kind of make up, decide what you're going to do once everybody's chased out of the room. Then they go on to have old business and new business listed with no old business or new business. Old business meaning anything that they've talked about before, they could bring up now and take action on it. New business, anything they haven't talked about before, same thing. Absolutely voids out the meeting that's going to be held on April 27. So if they can't handle this right, what do they do with their patients? How about the patient's charts?
Nobody is supposed to question the medical community, Bob.
Absolutely. Yeah, the science is settled. Yeah, now there's an interesting provision in our open government law that said notice of the meeting shall be given. This is for executive sessions. Notice of the meeting shall be given as required for any other meeting. The notice shall indicate the place and time of the meeting and shall indicate the general subject matter to be discussed, parenthesis, if not confidential, as well as a specific exemption permitting an executive or closed meeting. Now, this applies to meetings when you have a lawyer in the room. I suspect that Guam Memorial has a lawyer in the room. Otherwise, why are they meeting an executive session, right? So between the Guam Visitors Bureau and the Guam Memorial Hospital, it looks like they're having a contest to see who can violate the open government law most often.
Maybe they're testing their legal counsel, who should be saying, who ought to be saying, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming, but this meeting is illegal.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, kind of like a Rob Weinberg. Yeah. Not the way to do it. Next on the item on the agenda, Guam Board of Medical Examiners versus Pasatiempo. The headline here, Medical Board denies licensure for psychiatrists facing criminal charges. And interestingly enough, this article that ran in the Post actually has a picture of the first page of the agenda, which is a good idea. and it shows all of the pending cases, etc. These agendas, you folks on boards and commissions, are probably the most important papers you deal with during your time as a board member or a commissioner, because that's where, if it ain't on the agenda, you can't do it. It's that simple. The Board of Medical Examiners denied the application for licensure for former psychiatrist Abner Pas. Now here it's Pasatiempo. I thought it was Pasatiempo. Anyhow.
That's what it's, yeah, it's Pasatiempo in the Post as well.
Yeah, Pasa. But here in the text here for the Post, it's Pasatiempo. They left out an A. Complaints filed with the GBME against Pasatiempo were closed following the decision. GBME Chairman Nathaniel Berg noted that because the complaints are now closed and licensure denied, Pasatiempo is no longer under the jurisdiction of the board. Now that's an interesting way to solve your problems, right? Solve your problems dealing with complaints. Well, he's no longer licensed to practice here, so we don't, and that makes sense from a legal standpoint. I suspect from the lady whose complaint got lost, it doesn't make any sense at all.
The Pontius Pilate move.
Exactly. A former government of Guam psychiatrist, Abner Pasatiempo, so his name changed from the front page to the second page, is no longer able to practice on Guam. His application for licensure was unanimously denied by the GBME. When Pasatiempo worked at Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, 8 sexual harassment complaints were filed against him by patients who were under his care. All of the complaints were closed last week after a forensic psychiatrist conducted a review, and there was a severe departure from the standard of care, secondary to unprofessional terminology and serious boundary violations. Are we talking about Pasatiempo or Joe Biden here? Just to be sure, all of the cases are then thereby closed, as this person is no longer has a license on Guam and is denied licensure and is therefore no longer under the jurisdiction of the GBME. Chairman Nathaniel Berg said during the board's monthly meeting. Dr. Annie Berdadzu was the board member assigned to investigate the case. After she reviewed the complaint, medical records, all the supporting documents, and the expert witness conclusion, Berdadzu said in part, "I agree with the findings that there was a violation of the standard of care." The Guam Office of Attorney General has filed an indictment against Pasatiempo, charging him with official misconduct and harassment. The criminal case awaits resolution. Pasatiempo has moved to Alaska. Cool.
No cold.
Where he made a court appearance denying the allegations for the case by the Guam case by video. The GBME investigation into the complaints against Pasatiempo did highlight the challenges the board has in investigating complaints. The GBME currently relies on board members and administrative staff to investigate complaints. Outside of the strict medical practice, I think we need to have access to investigators, Berdadzu said. The GBME has noted that hiring professional investigators is a priority that lacks funding, if you're listening to Reese Tetlahi. So this, this leaves another potential loophole here. Let's say that a doctor is accused, like Acoma has been accused. Suppose if he just whips in and files his signed resignation. It's over. No discipline possible. No jurisdiction. Okay.
We wash our hands.
Yeah. All right, let's take a short break and we'll come back to Sabrina versus Tony.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training. Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, here we go. Back on Tall Tales. Next item on the card here is Sabrina versus Tony. And by way of preface, you know, conventional political wisdom holds that you want to try to add a little diversity to your ticket. Thus, a male will run with a female, vice versa, in the case of Madeline Bradalio. But the conventional wisdom is that a lieutenant governor candidate doesn't add much strength to the ticket. What you're looking for is somebody who doesn't hurt the ticket. And that's why I put Sabrina versus Tony on this agenda here. And I'm also going to get into Josh, who is also running for re-election. And this conversation, or this part of the card, is going to center around something that I think is one of the most important issues in this election: abortion. And this is our opportunity to say, no, we don't want abortion in this community. Supreme Court, no Supreme Court. Jane Flores, no Jane Flores. We don't want abortion in our community. So in order to properly set the stage, Jose is going to play about a 6-minute YouTube video of our governor in action. Go ahead, Jose.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Lulian Guerrero, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts and comments regarding Bill 195-32. I am aware that there is already federal legislation that addresses the issue at hand, thus making this legislation unnecessary. As I read the bill, what was glaring to me is that you are now walking into the realm of medical practice that is not your area of expertise. By passing this bill, you're saying to me that you are allowing a special interest group to say that you and they know better than the experts in obstetrics, family practice, pediatrics, neonatology, and medicine. By way of this bill, you have taken away the discretion, the responsibility, the acumen, and the judgment of that medical professional who is on the ground experiencing the circumstances and is more equipped to make the decisions. There are medical standards vetted through scientific research and medical knowledge that govern the practice of doctors and guide them in making their decisions. By way of this bill, you have said to our doctors, who are well respected and highly regarded in our community, we have no confidence in your ability. This bill not only diminishes the medical profession, but it further carries them to jail by criminalizing them if they refuse to abide by the mandate. By way of this bill, you have affirmed that doctor to have committed aggravated murder, and for that crime, we will put that doctor in jail for life. And by the way, they will rot in jail because you are not eligible for parole, work release, or educational programs outside the confines of prison. If this bill passes, we as a community, through your representation, will have mandated a government policy that ignores medical expertise and puts not only our doctors, but also our nurses, medical assistants, our physician assistants, and any health professional present at that event, and we're putting them in jail. These health professionals are treasures. They are valuable resources. We are working hard to recruit and retain them, and now we send them a message that they may end up in jail for practicing their profession. I know and truly believe, Senators, that this is not the route you want to travel. This bill is very anti-quality of life because it does not consider the expense that the family will incur as a result of mandating treatment that most likely will not result in a quality of life outcome for the infant. Instead, what this bill does is it will burden the family with enormous medical bills. On the conservative side, if care and treatment is given for a year, that family or the government, if the infant becomes a ward of the territory, will at a minimum pay $273,000 a year just on hospital room charges. This does not include pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and health professional time. So it will be $273,000 plus a year. This means taking away limited resources that could be used by others that may have a better chance of a quality of life. I know that some will say you cannot put a price tag on life and money should not be a factor. But the reality of the situation is the family, the government, does not have the human and economic resource to provide the care that is required to sustain a life that medical science will tell you is not living a quality of life. You struggle daily to meet the challenges of healthcare costs. We saw that with the hospital and health insurance debates that you guys made. And now this bill will further add on to the challenges when it does not have to. Lastly, I would like to make this comment. We all have a greater challenge in our island. The community is more concerned on how we can decrease our unemployment rate of 13.3%. We are very concerned on how we can work together to provide more jobs because our job growth has been stagnant over the last 5 years. We are very concerned about access to health care. We are very concerned that we are not screaming to the federal government to include us in the health insurance exchange so that we can have affordable health care to everyone. We are very concerned about how we can provide affordable housing to many first-time home owners. We are extremely concerned about the rising crimes we see today. People do not feel safe in their homes. Women are scared to go to the grocery stores alone because they fear that they could be robbed in the middle of the day. Employees do not feel safe in their work environment. Domestic violence is on the rise. Sexual assault of minors and rape cases are on the rise. You have in your campaigns pledged to work on these issues. You were all voted to help address these concerns. The issues you ran on were why you are my senators. Most of the voters did not vote for you based on whether you are pro-choice or pro-life. Please, let's get back on track to the more compelling issues at hand that have a greater impact to the quality of life of our people. I ask that when you are considering this bill to seriously consider the negative consequences of this piece of legislation that I have just enumerated. Please talk to as many people as you feel is necessary. Talk to the experts that can give you factual and objective information. I trust that you will do your due diligence, and I know that you will act in favor of the greater good of our community. And in so doing, you will arrive to the conclusion that this bill should not pass. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator.
So there you have it. That's our governor. She was not our governor. She's talked for maybe 6 minutes, huh, Jose?
Around that time.
And once again, it wasn't the word that she used. It's the word that she didn't use in her whole screed. She didn't use the word abortion. Yeah. So, and that, of course, is what she was testifying. She was testifying against the bill that became the Infant Child's Right to Life Act. And the focus of the bill was the poor, unfortunate child that survived an abortion. A physician attempted an abortion, and the child was born alive. And you heard what our governor's analysis was here. Well, it's better, so the question is, do we then treat that baby the same way we would treat any other baby? Do we provide medication? Do we provide incubator, food, whatever else is necessary? Or do we say, well, the procedure didn't work, so we'll just let the baby lie there and die?
And it's amazing that we have to legislate something like that. I don't know if this happened before or after this legislation, but a partial birth abortion, which means that you just leave the head of a baby inside the mother and terminates life through, it's going to be a little graphic here, snipping the spinal cord of the baby, is illegal on Guam. But we had to legislate that you have to provide just basic care for any newborn, especially to one that survived an abortion.
Yeah.
And why would you have to define a human this way when they're already born?
Well, and what it comes down to, once again, I mean, one thing I give Vanessa Williams credit for, she laid it out. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. So if it's not convenient, what's the difference between, a minute or two between born and not born? And the governor gives you, Governor Leon Guerrero gives you the answer here. Let the baby die because there's a risk his quality of life won't be that good.
Imagine if the baby was born with Down syndrome and this was a testimony for that. Or the baby was born with cerebral palsy or any kind of disability that she doesn't render a quality of life.
Yeah.
Her conditions.
Exactly.
This is why she buried this testimony during her first run in the election. And I think this is important, especially since we went through a 2-year health emergency pandemic where our voices didn't matter. It was just what she wanted to do.
Exactly.
It's a sole authority health emergency.
Exactly. And once again, her testimony, you are just taking the choice away, or the authority away from the doctors. And certainly a doctor should be able to determine whether to let the baby, the poor helpless baby who was born alive, die because you don't want to treat it because it would cost what, $270,000 the first year or something?
It would be a burden.
It would be a burden.
You know how offensive that is to families who have children with disabilities and they have the incredible quality of life.
Yeah.
Because they're loved.
Exactly. Yeah, well, that's our governor. Okay, so let's talk in terms of our lieutenant governors right now. We found out yesterday that Sabrina Salas is going to be the running mate of Michael San Nicolas. And listening to Sabrina and Mike on the radio this morning, I listened to the Ray Gibson show, of course, and from what I read in the paper about the interplay between the two, it almost sounds like a blind date.
They just met outside like 5 minutes before.
Yeah. Well, for those of you guys, for those who, I don't know if people do this anymore, but some of it used to work back in the days when I was young, which is forever ago. But, a guy would see a female that he thought was pretty attractive. And you never got a blind date with another guy back in those days. So, you'd see that female, and then maybe you had a friend that was a friend of that girl. and you'd say, hey, can you fix me up with Susie? And your friend would say, hey, Susie, Bob would like to go out with you. Can you go out with Bob? Yeah, okay. Blind date.
Well, in this case, the first two didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, that's just a half blind date. The real blind date is that neither of the parties know one another, but there's a do-gooder, a Karen in between, who says, you know, Susie just moved to town. She'd make a nice girlfriend for Bob. Susie, would you like to go out with Bob? Bob, would you like to go out with Susie? Susie who? Susie Schmidt. What's she like? Oh, she's a great personality. The girls just love her at pajama parties. You really like her. That's a blind date, and it sounds like Sabrina and Mike on the show this morning, because Mike says, well, you know, I've always been pro-life, which by that he means anti-abortion, and Sabrina comes up with, I think it's Dodge number 3. Well, yeah, me too, but, you know, I just don't think we should be telling the woman what to do with her body.
If I could just give one suggestion to Michael St. Nicholas, when somebody asks you a question about either pro-abortion or anti-abortion, don't defer to the woman and say, you're more qualified to speak on this. Absolutely. Because we are all qualified to speak on this.
So long as we maintain our humanity, we are all qualified to speak on it. And by the way, there was an interesting aside there. I'm going to come back to the main subject here, but I got to talk about myself for a minute, Jose. And Mike said that, you know, they talked a little bit about the situation at mental health and the Hatch Act, et cetera. And Michael St. Nicholas said, you know, you'd be surprised how many people come up and tell me, you know, they'd like to do this, that, or the other thing, but they're afraid, they're intimidated that if they say something, they'll lose their job, or their wife will lose their job, or bad things will happen to them. And Ray said, you know, they should all just be like Bob Klitzkie. A suggestion that I thought had so much merit that I wore one of my special T-shirts today that I'm going to show you right now. There it is. Now, I know all you tailgaters are going to say, hey, Bob, that's pretty neat. Where can I buy one? Does Kmart sell them? Sorry about that, folks. But actually, this isn't the finished product. This is just the first cut.
Prototype.
Yeah, the prototype. The next generation of these shirts will have something on the back that said, I'm very proud of my humility. Yeah, so anyhow, it was a good interview between the two, and I was struck by how little St. Nicholas seemed to know about his running mate. Blind date, you know, somebody fixed him up, some intermediary or something like that. So, so our choices are pretty slim right now. If we were to choose candidates based on their running mates. Now, we know that Lou is going to run with Josh. I don't know what Josh's position is on abortion. I have a suspicion because he kvetched. He did some industrial grade kvetching when he was not able to participate in a sacrament of the Catholic Church because of his sexual preference. Yeah, you can, how do I say this, Jose? In order to participate in a sacrament, you must come before the altar in a state of grace. And if you are practicing homosexual, you are not in a state of grace.
If I could just clarify, you're absolutely right. You said the words practicing or living the lifestyle, and not just have a preference.
Yeah.
Because I think that is what it is.
Yeah.
But the acting on it, I think, is what concerns the church.
Yeah. So if you are openly and notoriously homosexual, and the church says, no, you can't participate in the christening of one of your collateral relatives, It comes with the territory. So that's one of the lieutenant governors.
Again, without going into the catechesis of it, a godparent is supposed to be fostering the Catholic traditions and teachings. And if that's not one of the teachings, it's impossible to be that guardian.
Yeah.
And that's what the church determines. There's also other categories. They ask if you're married in the church or not. And that's also a way to disqualify.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you can't fix it so that you can be qualified.
Yes, yeah. So that's one of the lieutenant governor candidates, and he's running with Lou. We got a pretty good idea where she stands on the A word by watching that video. She is all in favor of it, although she hasn't said anything about it lately, has she?
Well, no, actually, she was on record saying that Jane Flores's letter, the recent
that's
one,
right, yeah,
is the official statement of the administration.
That's right. You're right. Yeah, she didn't have. She wasn't outgoing enough to come forward and say it herself. She had one of her minions come along and read it into the record and then say, "Yeah, Jane speaks for me."
By proxy.
Yeah, by proxy. So then on the Republican side, we've got Tony Atta, who said he will vote for the bill, which suggests to me that he's anti-abortion, and that's good. But, of course, Tony was one of the key players in the Juan Pat 10. He was one of the original Juan Pat 10. He got the money. He fought it. He fought the repeal of the Juan Pat 10 in the next session of the legislature, a battle led by Michael San Nicolas and the San Nicolas posse. 5 senators took the initiative to roll those salaries back. The San Nicolas posse. So this is kind of a rematch, isn't it?
This is going to be just like the title, a 3-ring circus. This is going to be very interesting.
And San Nicolas was finally successful, but Tony Atta fought it right down to the end, and then he lost because there was a strong turn the rascals out movement. 7 senators failed for re-election because of the Juan Pat 10, including Miss Judy Juan Pat 10 herself, who went from speaker to civilian in one fell swoop. But then Tony ran with Ray Tenorio, which is enough, to, as far as I'm concerned, to taint him forever. And interestingly enough, Ray Tenorio is a classic example of the political climber. Someone who starts out at the bottom with the idea, I'm going to climb all the way up to the top. I'll be a senator, and then I'll be a lieutenant governor. Kind of the James Moylan approach to things. Do you have any idea what you want to do as a public elected official? Oh, yeah, I've got a lot of power. I've got a lot of things in my platform. Well, what's your objective? Well, I want to move up to higher office. You know, if you're in 5th grade, obviously you want to move to 6th grade, right? So Ray Tenorio kind of built his whole life around that climb, and he had so many things going for him, man. That guy was really quick on the draw.
Are you saying that he read the Hillary Clinton handbook?
I think he must have, yeah. But it didn't work out for him, so what happened to him? A one-way ticket to Palookaville, and he's still rattling around in Palookaville, probably never to set foot on this island again. So it just goes to show you, you got to be really careful when you're looking at people who are running for office. You know, what are they really about? Ray Tenorio obviously was about one thing, Ray Tenorio. Very little principle, a lot of ambition. Okay, let's take a short break here, and I'll come back to Sabrina, and I'll come back to Kellis, and then I'll get back into my chatter here.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations. us. We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Okay, so here we are. I got a lot more to say about Sabrina versus Tony, but I've got Kellis in the green room, and let's see who just Kellis in the green room. So go for it, Kellis.
How you doing, Judge?
Doing great.
So I was listening to the governor's spiel. So there's two things I want to say about that. So first of all, for people that believe in choice, they would always sit there, and before they said that life does not begin until the child takes a breath. Because you could have an abortion all the way up to just before you gave birth. But now they're trying to say, well, what happens if the baby is born? So now, wait, the intent of the procedure was an abortion. So we should be able to continue with the abortion. And then, but she made it sound like if the child is in such dire strait that it's going to take $200,000 and something a year just in the hospital rooms, then that's the reason for an abortion. So she should, then it tells me that she is pro-life except for in extreme cases. And we know that she's not. Even though the pro-choices always bring out the most extreme case, and it makes it sound like of the millions of abortions that have happened in the United States over these years, that every single one of them was this extreme case. And we know it's not. That it's actually less than 1% of 1% of all 1% of all abortions that happen that are that extreme. And so I just thought that was kind of hypocritical that that's her argument against, for the bill for the abortion bills. So that's what I wanted to say. But I just thought it was just so interesting the way that she put it. So to me, if you can get her on record as saying only in these extreme cases am I pro-choice. Other than that, I'm pro-life.
I suspect that she'll say just about anything so long as she can continue to support that agenda, Kellis.
Yeah, but like I said, because before, they keep pushing back when does life begin?
Mm-hmm.
And it gets further and further, and pretty soon, I'll be able to prove that my 27-year-old nephew is a complete and total waste of human flesh, and I should be able to have an abortion. What do you think about that?
It follows, doesn't it? There's a string of logic that ties all this together. There should be a warranty period. So if the child is born, you could have 2 years to return it to the manufacturer.
Right. But what if if they sit there and say that as a Republican, you could have an abortion of a Republican at any time? All the way up to and including 95 years old.
Yeah, well, I think medical science was working on one for Donald Trump, but it didn't work out. They had to settle for 2 impeachments instead. Good talking to you, Kellis.
Okay, Judge. Bye.
Yeah.
There's so many things that can be discussed about this. Iceland did something very similar, where they were bragging about their 0% birth rate of anybody with Down syndrome. But when they were pressed for details, it was because anyone that tested for Down syndrome, an unborn baby, was terminated in the womb.
I remember reading that in the paper, and of course the liberal media will put it in a light most favorable to the abortionist. And when I saw it, I didn't pay that much attention. Wow, no more Down syndrome in Iceland. They must have come up with some special drug that they give to mothers or some special prenatal care. No, We just abort every single Down syndrome baby and then stand around and gloat after we've done it.
And that's from gene mapping, I think.
Yeah.
Which actually, another thing to look up, that test for Down syndrome isn't always 100%.
Yeah. Well, what, 90%? Close enough, right?
I think it's even lower than that.
Yeah. So we really have a Hobson's choice here. We have the Wampat 10 on the one hand with Tony Atta. And we have a pro-abortion with Sabrina Salas. And then we have someone who there's a certain amount of national pride with respect to the current lieutenant governor. You know, we're really proud because we have the first openly homosexual governor in the United States. We really did something well there, didn't we? Yeah.
Not a qualifier.
Yeah. So we of course vote for governors, not for lieutenant governors, although they do play a role. And a poor choice can hurt a candidate. A good choice can help them maybe a little bit. Now, of course, I want to do away with the office of lieutenant governor. I gave a speech to the Chamber of Commerce in 2018 where I said, I'm not running for governor, but if I were, here's what I would do. And one of the things I would do would be to petition the Congress to abolish the position of lieutenant governor. Let's take it right out of the Organic Act. We don't need no stinking lieutenant governor. Now, maybe once upon a time back in 1950 when transportation was so, the only way to get from California to Guam was to stow away on a slow boat to China. And, airplanes had pontoons. And I can remember 60 years ago, if you wanted to call the mainland, it would cost you $12 for 3 minutes when I was making about $25 a day. Let's take a short break, and I'm going to come back to about abolition of the Office of Attorney General.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Escaping a wildfire. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Hundreds of people near Flagstaff, Arizona pack up and quickly leave their homes as a wildfire explodes across more than 6,000 acres. About 760 homes and 1,000 animals evacuated.
We had deputies and other law enforcement agencies right next to the fire evacuating homes and animals from many of those residences.
Coconino Sheriff Jim Driscoll, some 200 firefighters on the scene with more on the way. Many Americans are flying and riding mask-free after a federal judge voided the transportation mask mandate this week. Major U.S. airlines immediately tossing out their mask rules for domestic flights, and now European airlines are weighing mask requirements for flights to the U.S. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is making masks voluntary on his state's public transit systems and airports, but says local municipalities can decide their own mask rules. New York City, however, is sticking with its mask for trains, buses, airports, and Uber and Lyft rides. Russia is hammering the eastern portion of Ukraine in a new major offensive after failing to take control of the capital city of Kiev. And conditions in Mariupol are growing more dire by the hour.
In the devastated coastal city of Mariupol, a brutal standoff that we've been reporting on. Ukrainian troops holed up in a massive steel plant. Ukrainian troops now claim the Russian military dropped heavy bombs to flatten those plants and anyone inside them. And the United Nations is now calling for a 4-day pause in fighting leading up to the Orthodox Easter this week here in Ukraine.
Fox's Matt Finn in Lviv. America's listening to Fox News.
Howdy, folks.
KFC's Colonel Sanders here. I'm excited to announce 3 of my favorite flavors coming together. Honey, garlic, and butter. And we're putting them on my delicious KFC Extra Crispy Chicken for a limited time. Grab a bucket for the family or try them on my chicken strips. The new honey garlic butter chicken is now available at your favorite KFC location. KFC, it's finger licking good.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
California lawmakers are working to pass several bills meant to regulate firearms by targeting gun makers.
One bill that passed out of the Assembly Judiciary Committee would require, quote, gun makers and dealers take reasonable precautions under a firearm industry standard of conduct in making and selling weapons. And gun makers would not be allowed to distribute guns that are likely to create an unreasonable risk of harm to public health and safety. The bill's author said he hopes this makes the industry more thoughtful about how it sells its weapons. The NRA said the real intent here is to torment manufacturers with costly litigation. Another committee is discussing a bill that targets ghost guns, blocking the sale of unfinished gun parts and requiring Californians with weapons missing serial numbers to get them registered with the Justice Department. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
The 3 white men convicted of a federal hate crime in the murder of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia will find out their sentence on August 1st. Greg and Travis McMichael and their neighbor William Roddy Bryan face up to life in prison on that charge, and that would be on top of the life in prison sentence they got earlier this year for the murder. A store manager is out of a job after taking to TikTok to bash working conditions.
Mary Gundel, a Dollar General store manager in Tampa, says she was fired for sharing TikTok videos about staffing shortages, workload, and pay.
It's time for a change. Things need to change.
She tells Tampa's Fox 13 News local employees are researching ways to unionize.
I want fair treatment for Dollar General employees. I want fair wages for them.
Dollar General says it has an open door policy and surveys for feedback, explaining it's disappointed anytime an employee feels that it has not lived up to its goals, adding it does not agree with all the statements made by Gundel. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Hafide Guam, this is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. Our teams at Public Health and GITA are rolling out several new programs to make childcare more affordable for working families while supporting childcare providers and growing jobs. Programa ni Pinila ni Famaguan Guahan launched on April 5th, and we've expanded eligibility so thousands more families now qualify. Please visit guamchildcare.com to learn more about these programs and apply for relief today.
This ad is paid for with federal funds and administered by the Department of Public Health and Social Services.
We're already Pica's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better.
Announcing The Point on Alexa.
In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa
to stream The Point.
And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
another grand and glorious halftime show comes to an end, and how we enjoyed it every day. So I was talking about the office of lieutenant governor and the speech I made to the chamber back in 2018, where I said, I'm not running for governor, but if I were, here are some of the things I do. On the list, sell government house. Why do we need government house? In 1950, when we brought all our governors out from the U.S. mainland, yeah, it made sense. Does it make any sense now, or is it horror of horrors, a remnant of colonialism? Whoa. That's exactly what it is. And the office of lieutenant governor is another remnant of colonialism. Before 1970, when we elected our lieutenant governor, we had a governor, and then the number 2 position was the secretary of Guam, who became the acting governor when the governor was off island, indisposed, whatever. And the secretary of Guam was just a nice way to reward a loyal political follower. The last secretary of Guam was Kurt Moylan, because Richard Nixon appointed Carlos Camacho and Kurt Moylan as the last appointed. Before that, it was a guy named Denver Dickerson. Sounds like somebody out of a serial TV show, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Denver Dickerson, who was just a really good Democrat and got a nice reward out of being a good Democrat. And that's what the office was for. And that's what it had always been for. And as I mentioned, at one time, just 60 years ago, it cost $12 to make a 3-minute phone call to the States. And it was hard to get from here to the States. You couldn't just get on a 747 and fly there. So at that time, it made some sense to have a deputy governor who could step in when the governor was off island. You didn't leave island for a week or so. If you're going to go, you're probably gone for a month. And given the fact that communication was so slow, I could see it. But it's not that way now. We don't need it at all. The governor is the governor no matter where he is or what he's doing.
Well, that was I was going to ask a question on that. According to the Organic Act, the governor leaves off island. There is an acting governor.
Mm-hmm.
But the governor who's left the island, are they no longer acting governor?
Well, he's not the acting governor. He is the governor.
So they can still do governor duties off island.
I think we have been faced with that question. If the governor is in Washington and his signature is needed, can he sign, or does he have to fly back home, sign, and then fly back to Washington?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that means we have 2 governors.
Well, it does. It is illogical at best. It is illogical. And we don't need it. It would cost us a lot of money. And it is not a good structure, because the governor and the lieutenant governor are independent from one another. The governor cannot tell the lieutenant governor what to do or what not to do. The governor cannot discipline. He can't say, you're suspended for 10 days. You're not going to get paid for 10 days, or you're fired, or whatever. So there have been some ferocious turf battles, and one of the reasons we have this federal clearinghouse is because one of those turf battles, where a Republican legislature wanted to stick it to a Democrat governor. So when the Democrat governor was off island and the lieutenant governor, with whom he had a skirt-tearing contest, in other words, they were at one another, legislature passes a law creating this clearinghouse, putting the lieutenant governor in charge of it, giving him a staff, etc., sending it over to the acting governor. Well, the governor's gone, and it becomes the law. So Ricky Bordallo had a lot of trouble with his lieutenant governor, a guy named Rudy Sablon. Rudy was a career government of Guam apparatchik. And I think probably when Ricky picked him conventional wisdom was Rudy's been around. Rudy knows what's going on. Rudy's a sharp guy. He'll be of assistant. But I think it was after like the first month they started to schism. And when Rudy lost re-election, and the next time around when he ran, he picked Eddie Regis as his lieutenant governor candidate. Eddie Regis had been off island for 30 years, a career Air Force officer.
He was outrageous.
He was outrageous. And of course, because he'd been gone so long, had no political base whatsoever. But Rudy's explanation was, I'll just run in my own merits. I just don't want somebody who's going to foul things up for me. I don't want to be fighting with my lieutenant governor. And that's why he chose Eddie Regis. The first Camacho-Moylan matchup seemed to work pretty well. We had Carlos Camacho, the father of Mary and Felix, Mary and Felix, the father of Mary and Felix. And his lieutenant governor was Kurt Moylan, which is a good, solid political name on Guam. And they seemed to get along quite well. It was a pretty smooth running administration as far as I can remember it. But the second Camacho Moylan administration was a disaster. After like the first 6 months, they weren't even on speaking terms. And of course, when Felix ran for re-election, he picked up another running mate.
Which Moylan ran with Felix Camacho? What was his? That wasn't Doug Moylan.
Caleo.
Oh, Caleo.
Yeah.
Who was the offspring of the original lieutenant governor?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kurt's son. Yeah. So it was a nice, and I was in favor of Camacho Moylan. My rap was, well, I voted for Camacho Moylan once before and it worked pretty well. Why not give it another shot? But it didn't work very well at all. So we really don't need to have a lieutenant governor. And part of my rap is that if I ever ran for governor, I got a feeling probably I'm not going to. But if I did, I would choose somebody whose only job would be to petition Congress to do away with her job. And that might be some hard to find, but, we keep perpetuating this really broken system for no good reason other than, everybody knows you got to have a lieutenant governor. And, we've always done it that way. And there's no doubt in my mind that we couldn't work without a lieutenant. All this BS. There's no reasoning or logic in it at all. So we wind up with the odd couple, Mike and Sabrina. Mike says, "Yeah, I'm pro-life. I'm anti-abortion." And Sabrina, "Well, yeah, I just don't think we should tell a woman what to do with her body." Nice match. So how is that going to work out when we get to some of the really crucial issues? Not very well, I'm afraid. And then over on the Republican side, we've got Tony Atta, who's up to his neck was up to his neck in the whole Juan Pat thing, Juan Pat 10 deal. And he has never come forward and said, I done a wrong thing. I made a mistake. I'll never do it. I'll never do it again.
No repentance.
No reconciliation whatsoever. Okay, I still got more to say about this, but I got Frank on the line. I got a caller who wants to be Frank. So, caller, you can be Frank.
Hi, Rob. I agree with you. I don't think we need a lieutenant governor. I don't even think we need a congressman that can't even vote in the Congress. What's the use of having him there? He can't even vote.
Is that a question? Is that a question? Or
yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll give you my
answer. Congressman there.
I'll give you my answer. Okay. Our representative to Congress has an office in the Rayburn office building, just like every other congressman. He's got a staff. He's got a travel allowance. He has the ability to speak on the floor of the United States Congress. He can stand up and debate just like anybody else. He is he can be sworn in to various committees. Right now, Michael San Nicolas is on the Finance Committee, which is probably the most powerful committee in Congress, and he is the vice chairman.
Yeah.
So because our congressman has committee memberships, he's in the position where he can log roll. In other words, he's conversant with other congressmen, and they often get together and cooperate on supporting one another's bills. So he can do that. Robert Underwood was heard to say that the fact he didn't have a vote was a little bit of a handicap, but he said mostly getting things done in Congress was about establishing relationships. So, Frank, if you want to take the position that we shouldn't have one or we don't need one because he can't vote, I got to strenuously disagree with you.
I think we have to change the name then, because if he cannot vote, then he's not equal to a congressman in the United States.
Is official. You got an axe to grind there, Frank. But he's not.
I'm just saying that if he cannot
Frank,
vote, then he's not an equal.
Frank, you and I are not equals either. I'm the host. You're the caller. So when you make these statements, these talking points, you know, you can't filibuster after that. So the official name for our representative in Congress is delegate. It's not congressman. We call him that, but he's delegate.
Okay.
And territories have had delegates going all the way back to the beginning of the United States. Even the continental territories had delegates, so it's a well-established office.
Bob, you should run for congressman. We need somebody like you in there. You know, maybe Guam can get somewhere. We have somebody like you that's in Congress, and maybe not lieutenant governor or governor. Maybe a congressman. Maybe you should run for Congress. You know,
it's hard for me to argue with someone who seems to be well-informed, Frank. You got a good point there, but
I think you would do Guam very good if you were in Congress. I believe you would move a lot of stuff if you were the congressman. That's all I got to say, Rob.
Well,
have a great day.
You said you can call in and say that one anytime you want to, Frank. Good talking to you.
Rob. I mean, really think about it. Maybe pick a packet up, man. If you run, I'll vote for you.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah. Well, I guess I ought to pick up a packet. Yeah, because that's such a newsworthy. Klitzkie picks up packet. Walks outside and throws it in the dumpster, but he picked up a packet.
That'd be front page.
Yeah, it would.
But I hate to break it to you, but I think Frank's trying to get rid of you.
Probably. Yeah, I'd rather have you over there in D.C. Than on this talk show. Yeah, maybe we get a better talk show host than you, right?
So I'm gonna throw my tangents in again. What's up with the governor's liaison to D.C. then? Is that just a lobbyist position?
At best. Is it just a sinecure? I think that's what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's just, Madeline, we'll give you $50,000. We'll give you a tentago. We'll give you some kind of an office, etc. We know that your connections are so old and so deep that you still control a lot of votes, even though you're over in D.C. So, yeah. Now, the story on Madeline, I don't know if this is one of these conventional political stories, you know, that when Madeline was on island, she met 250 people every single day. Breakfasts, meetings, whatever. So 250 people every day, in contact with them, talking to them, making eye contact, etc. And you got to give Madeline credit, you know, for a young lady that came from, what was it, Gopher Prairie, Minnesota, to Guam, without perhaps a whole lot going for her. She was a daughter of a teacher or principal. She has probably been the most successful politician that we will ever see. Others have risen higher, perhaps, but nobody ever bounced back as high as she did after she fell. I mean, she fell all the way to the bottom when her husband was convicted of a federal crime, committed suicide. You know, she was way at the bottom at that time, but she bounced all the way back up to the time that she was a viable candidate for governor. Got elected to she ran with Ping Duenas, and she was not an easily dismissible candidate. She was gold. She ran for the legislature. She was elected. There just wasn't any sense in running against her in a head-to-head race. So extremely successful, extremely knowledgeable as to how to work personal, what we call retail candidacies. So Madeline Berdallo would be one of those people who is a candidate for legend. You know, when I suppose sooner or later, I mean, it looks like she's almost defying the odds. I think she must be in her upper 80s right now, and she's still chugging along. So I can understand why governors would put her there. I don't like to spend money for nothing. I don't like to spend money for a political advantage, but sometimes things like that happen. Okay, so I was just saying that I really think we should do away with the position of lieutenant governor, and perhaps this will be the time when we have a pro-abortion and an anti-abortion candidate running on the same ticket. And of course, if I were over there, Felix and Tony, and I had to face them, then the obvious political candidate is to split them up. You know, hey, Mike, I heard your candidate say that she doesn't think that we should be making laws that tell a woman what to do with her body. What do you think about that, Mike? Well, I'm anti-abortion. Have you spoken with your lieutenant governor about that? So that would really work well for Felix and Tony. It won't work very well for Lou and Josh. It won't work very well at all. Yeah. By the way, something else I picked up this morning when I was listening to Ray's show, and that is that I expect people who run for public office, whether it's senator, governor, lieutenant governor, Washington rep, etc., to be what I call engaged. E-N-G-A-G-E, engaged. In other words, knowing what's going on the island, knowing who's doing what to whom and why they're doing it, knowing what's happening, what isn't happening, and having a pretty good grasp on all of the issues. Well, I think Mike has a lot going for him. One thing I like about Mike from the beginning, he is not one who is going to be a sheep. When he said, I ain't signing no stinking loyalty pledge. I got other things to do. I want to appeal to all of the people, not just to the Democrats. I really thought that was good. And I think that was the making of a political figure when he did that. I think he's still capitalizing on that. But this morning, when Ray talked to him about some of the things that could be done or should be done, well, how about the Chamorro Land Trust? So we got people that have been on that list since 1995. Why aren't we giving the land to them, the leases? Well, if you were engaged, you would understand that our government entered into a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice that basically scratched the 1995 list. It's just a piece of paper now, and it doesn't provide any rights to anyone. Now, I suspect that a lot of people haven't figured that out. I'll give you a couple of snippets here. Someone went to the Chamorro Land Trust the Chamorro Land Trust, in order to check up on his claim, and he was sent to the Ancestral Lands Commission. And then we found out that the Ancestral Lands Commission have the old documents have holes in them because the termites ate through them. We didn't have termite-proof paper back in those days. And this was an issue for the Land Trust Commission for a while. This has got to be fixed because this is really important. The reason that it's important is this. If you want to be eligible for a Chamorro Land Trust lease now, you have to be able to show that you owned real property that was condemned by the United States government between the end of the war, 1968. If you can't do that, no lease for you. And then there's kind of a workaround if you can prove that you farmed or ranched on land that was taken by eminent domain. That'll work. But the fact that you're Chamorro and you live on Guam doesn't do it anymore. So all those poor people that stood in that line for all that time wind up with nothing unless they can make themselves eligible under the new criteria, which the Chamorro Land Trust Commission has not said boo about. One of the things that happened when the claimant was hustled off to the Ancestral Lands Commission was that when Therese Terlehe found out about it, she was angry. Why are they doing that to this claimant, He should be just getting his lease. So Therese obviously voted to change the law as part of the compromise with the Department of Justice, but I don't think it's come home to her and everybody else that voted for the law exactly what they did. So the deal was the Department of Justice Fair Housing Office filed suit against the governor and the commission and Snow White and two of the dwarfs, saying that your statutory scheme is racially discriminatory because believe it or not, only Chamorros can get the land. That is racial discrimination. Now, I know this guy over here and the lazy boy saying, well, that's not racial discrimination. That's about Chamorros, right? Couldn't be racial discrimination. It's about Chamorro. Anyhow, it was racial discrimination, and a suit was filed. And if the government of Guam had lost that suit, obviously there wouldn't be any more Chamorro Land Trust leases. And I think there would have been a substantial risk that those who had received leasehold interests under the statutory scheme might have lost those leasehold interests. So I could see why, the government of Guam would have wanted to settle. So they brought Mike Phillips in to work with the Attorney General's office, and they settled. And the settlement was, you got to amend the law. You can still call it a Chamorro Land Trust, but you got to amend the law. It can't be based on race. It has to be based on owning land that had been taken by the United States, et cetera, as I mentioned earlier. So that puts a totally different face on it. And obviously Michael San Nicolas didn't know that if he's saying, oh, hell, those people have been waiting since 1995. I suppose I could excuse him a little bit because he's in Washington. He's not here. Probably doesn't follow local news as much as I do because it's my job. But still, I can remember back in the day when I went to Washington on business of one kind or another. And one of the things that I would always do when I was in Washington, I'd spend an afternoon in Delegate Wanpat's office, because Delegate Wanpat subscribed to the Pacific Daily News. So, back in those days, no internet, no iPad, none of the modern conveniences. You really get hungry, you want to know what's going on in Guam. So I used to go over there and I'd read a stack of maybe 15 or 20 Guam Daily Newses or Pacific Daily Newses at a time just to get caught up. And I would think that people in that office would make it a point to know what's going on the island because it's so much easier now than it was back in the day. All right, let's head for Wrigley Field in the seventh inning stretch.
Hafa-day, Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's Hafa-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago. We are going to walk out of Wrigley Field, go straight to O'Hare, climb on a plane and fly to, what is it called now? It's not Orly Field anymore. I've landed there. I can't remember the name of what's the name of the airport in Paris?
It's Charles de Gaulle.
Charles de Gaulle, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Grand Charles, like they say in France. Yeah.
Okay.
Who has been dead for almost 60 years now. So anyway, good afternoon.
Sure.
And let's see, I wanted to pipe in a little bit on the abortion issue. On Lou's testimony, Lou Leon Guerrero Cook, even though she doesn't use it, which shows how much she doesn't like her husband. Her main argument is basically to leave the doctors make the right decision because people are not educated enough. And to me, that always rings those alarm bells. And you see... And I'm having flashback of Dr. Mengele during World War II doing industrial scale research on people in the concentration camp or Dr. Yamamoto in Inner Mongolia spreading disease to see how people will resist them. This is the type of doctor arguments that lead to those eugenic theories that have been totally debunked at the beginning of the 20th century and somehow are being picked up again by all those people advocating abortion and other inhumane treatment. And it's very interesting that, we shouldn't let those babies with disability live. I mean, as a Catholic, it's very clear. Do not touch any of those small children. That's direct command from Jesus to us. And this is what those people do under the guise of women health, which has nothing to do with women health. Murder has never been part of healthcare. And basically, it's straight out of the Nazi playbook. And those people should be totally ashamed of advancing those fake medical arguments. But then if you take Jen Flores, she goes even further. She wants to protect the privacy between the patient and the doctor. Those are big words. But then she works for an administration and a governor who has trampled on doctor and patient relationship, has instituted segregation against unvaccinated people has enforced mask mandates that have been proven scientifically that they are ineffective against the virus, despite the claims that they are, and use medical straw men, or let's say straw people, because there's quite a few women in there, to push for the violation of the First, the Fourth, and the Sixth Amendment. And we've seen the federal court just nullified the Biden administration mandates for wearing masks in public transportation. And the judge's arguments were very strong, and I don't think that even on appeal it will be overturned, because he did his research very well, and it's very interesting to see. So those people are hiding behind what they call let the science, follow the science, but they are not following the science. They are diverting science to advance a fake agenda, and it's very dangerous. And so that brings us back to the lieutenant governors. So I met Tony Ada a couple of times during fundraising, and I think he's either clueless or he's lazy, because he doesn't really make the effort to see when he's done something wrong to go and correct it. And you brought the issue with the 1-10, but you could also bring the issue of him as the running mate of Tenorio. They didn't campaign. Basically, they didn't do anything until the last week. And when you talk to him, they did a fantastic campaign. That's what I say. He's either clueless or he's very lazy. And my impression was that the only moral compass that he has a dollar sign instead of a northern sign. And it's very disheartening to see that Camacho, who is a pretty strong candidate, couldn't find anybody better as a running mate. So for Michael San Nicolas, running mate, I think he went for the good image for the general public, just the way that Josh has been the friendly face for Lou. But it seems like they need to synchronize their watch, because they don't seem to be on the same wavelength on several issues, and maybe they need to coordinate a little better. But she presents very well. She's a nice-looking lady. She speaks softly. You can see that quality coming out as being an attractive, friendly candidate that would probably soften a little bit the angles, because Michael is probably going to have to get pretty nasty with Lou, because she's going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at him, and he knows that. And Josh is very interesting, because this past weekend with the Easter parties, I went to several parties, and I heard the same thing about Josh over and over again, is that he's well-liked by the common folks and a lot of people in the administration, even the ones that don't agree with his lifestyle and agree with his political position, they all say he's a real nice guy. So he has that nice guy touch, if you wish, which is something I didn't grab until last weekend. And it is true. And I had talked with a very close friend of mine who happens to be one of his closest assistants. And this is what this guy was telling me in the back. And I thought, well, he's being pretty partisan, so he's tooting his own tune. And but in fact, this is apparently a well-shared appreciation of Josh, and that a lot of people that vote Democrat say, well, Lou took him because of that quality, because she is very abrasive and he is more of the nice neighbor that you'd like to have. He talks to people softly and so on. So we have three very different lieutenant governors running. I agree with you that it's probably a position that's not necessary, but we have it and we have to deal with it. So it's quite interesting. And I had another conversation with somebody that worked closely with Tony Ada in the previous governor's administration, and I was told about the same thing about him, is that he doesn't like to work, and that makes me very wary about that choice of him as a lieutenant governor, especially myself as a Republican. I don't think it's a good choice, but the choice has been made. Now we have to do the best with what we have. So those were my remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Frenchie. As usual, you bring interesting perspectives to the issues at hand. So thanks for calling.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it was interesting also to hear that a lot of people listen to your show in the administration, because at one of the picnic there was a lot of people that work in the administration, not particularly in political offices, but in GovGuam. And apparently you have a lot of people listening to the show in the afternoon, especially in some of the more, let's say, enforcement areas. And they are listening carefully to your opinions, and a lot of them agree with you. So it's very interesting. That was a learning experience.
Yeah, well, if I were working for the government of Guam, I'd probably listen to the show too, Frenchie. So good talking to you, Frenchie.
You take care.
So long. Okay, I want to go back in and wrap up here. Sabina versus Tony. But I got a phone call here from Ken Flores, of all people. Good afternoon, Ken Flores.
Ken's my uncle. He's a little late. This is Phil. I just wanted to talk about a couple things. First,
Sorry,
your
Phil.
comments on no problem, RK. The expensive phone calls, not only were they so expensive, but I can remember my grandparents calling on Christmas or birthdays or something, and not only was it $1 million an hour, but you didn't know what time they were going to be able to call, because you had to line up at RCA or wherever it was.
Yeah, up in Mong. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and number two, I want happy birthday to Jose's grandmother, 100 years and 1 day old. That's it.
She'd be tickled that you said that. Thank you very much. Awesome. And you did say Phil, and my mind said Ken. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, don't do that. And let's go, Brandon. I'll talk to you guys later.
Good talking to you, Phil, as usual. So let's head from here to Churchill Downs.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Howdy, folks. KFC's Colonel Sanders here. I'm excited to announce 3 of my favorite flavors coming together. Honey, garlic, and butter. And we're putting them on my delicious KFC Extra Crispy Chicken for a limited time. Grab a bucket for the family or try them on my chicken strips. The new Honey Garlic Butter Chicken is now available at your favorite KFC location. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. I'm still working on the newest team here, the Mike and Bree team. Mike and Bree look like me. Well, actually, Mike and Bree don't look like me at all. They're too short. But we may, if we had to choose based on lieutenant governors, we may have to choose on the least worst. Which is worse? The morally compromised lieutenant governor we have right now, the pro-abortion candidate who's running with Mike, or the Juan Pat 10 confidant that Frenchie really gave something less than a ringing endorsement to. We may have to go with the least worst of those folks. But let me go to the green room here and see who I got calling in. I got Senator Duenas, and I got Drive-Through Jack. I was just thinking about Drive-Through Jack the other day when I heard that Jack in the Box is going to open a restaurant here on the island. Is that our Jack, Jose? Yeah. Okay, so starting out Senator Duenas and then Drive-Through Jack. Good afternoon, Senator Duenas.
Half a day, Your Honor. I'll keep it short because I know I'm violating the normal typical protocol of don't call too much. But I think what's important here is when you played Governor Leon Guerrero's bit there. I think if either one of the candidates in the prior election would have just used that as a commercial, they may have been more successful. I think it's important to note that the voice in the end closing out her statements is none other than Senator Frank Uggan, who I believe is the sponsor of that bill, or at least the co-sponsor, but I believe
he was the sponsor. He was the author.
Yeah, he's the sponsor, and he was the chairman at the time. I voted for that bill in favor. The thing is this, Bob, and I just got to make sure that I make this point. It is a theme with this governor. When you listen to that entire, chiding of the legislature, basically telling everybody, you don't know what you're doing, defer to professionals, you weren't elected for this. It is Bill 11. It is exactly the non-performance of when the Resolution 291 to shut down the emergency. This is going to be the contrast in the election, Bob, as far as I'm concerned. And yes, the pro-life position, I think, the anti-abortion position is absolutely going to be critical, I believe, and we'll see how this bill gets handled. But I will tell you right now, that entire testimony is our governor in a nutshell. We don't have a governor at this point, I believe. I would believe we have a straight-out dictator and somebody who really believes just get out of the way, I run the show, and that's the way we do it. And that, to me, is the contrast.
You really pointed, I hadn't thought in those terms, but you're absolutely right. Her approach to the legislature when she's talking about the Killing the Baby Act and her approach on ending the territorial emergency. Forever! And her approach on Bill 11 and her approach on the resolution, all the same. Pay no attention to those folks over there called the legislature. They don't know what they're doing, and I have to make sure that I set them straight because God only knows what harm they'll do if I don't. It's the same stick.
It's same stick. And to give cookies to Sabrina, although I disagree with her position on abortion. I think she expressed that frustration this morning, and I think that's what tipped her. When the time came to it, because I've interviewed with her a lot on this very issue, and she was very uncomfortable with the way this governor constantly conducts herself as basically just dismissing anybody in her way and loving everybody that she can give candy to. If you bow to me, if you adore me, you're good. If you don't, you're dead to me, and that's the point.
Yeah, absolutely. History repeating itself.
Oh, thanks, Senator.
Okay, well, thanks for that observation, Chris. As usual, we were right on point. Okay, so let's a little theme music here. Chow call. It's time for Drive-Through Jack.
Good afternoon, Bob. Good evening.
Hey.
Yeah, I would like to ring in on this issue about abortion and about the choice of candidate here for lieutenant governor. But first off, we know where the governor's position is on abortion. She can't do it through her own powers, so she does it behind doors. She goes through other means to try to get things done, such as hiring an abortion doctor. And who was in charge of it? It was Jane Flores. Jane Flores is a seasoned journalist, and it really it just amazed me that nobody here in the local media picked up on it. We picked it up through overseas news outlet, and that's a shame. So it questions: Did Jane send out a message to the media and the media ignored it? Or did she just purposely didn't provide that information because she knew what kind of atmosphere it is, and we already know the answer. We already know the answer, the position of Jane Flores and the current governor on abortion. They don't care it's a child in their womb. A previous letter that she wrote when the COVID hit, she mentions about the unborn child in her daughter's womb. So she doesn't care whether it's a live person in there or it's not. She's on that side that it has a right to terminate, and that's the question that that needs to be faced with Sabrina Salas. I agree. It's always been my position too that unless I'm getting correlated papers or getting papers Xerox or need the seal stamped on my papers, then I'll go to the LT. But other than that, you're right. I don't understand. Here's the thing to think about the abortion. Decades and decades and decades of abortion practices have been around for decades. Look at the ancillary activities. We have remember the greeting cards, Hallmark, American Greetings. Did they ever tap into the millions and millions of abortions and come out with a congratulations on your abortion card? Did they ever?
They never did. If you care enough to send the very best.
Yeah, they never did. But you can look about the sympathy cards and the condolences cards on the loss of a child in the womb. They have those. Were you ever invited to the anniversary of someone's abortion? Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever went to a bakery and you said, hey, we specialize in abortion cakes here. Congratulations on your anniversary. Congratulations. No such activity. Even though there's millions and millions of these being conducted, nobody in their right mind will venture in that except if you're selling baby parts. All right? So we know there's a moral thing that's going here that people somehow either they can't see it or it's not presented in a way that they can understand or grasp it. Say, hey, yeah, there's something wrong here. So, and it has a lot to do with the media. And, like Frenchie was talking and Tim Rohr was talking, they warned us before the gubernatorial election that this lady is pro-abortion. And she's going to try to undermine, but nobody listened, especially the media, because it wasn't part of the questions when the debates came along. So, I don't think it's a downfall. With this, I think Mike made a good choice. He's a physical conservative. I put him in the realm when it comes to Democrat with Uggan, because I remember, if Jose would remember, Senator Uggan was on another Catholic radio station, and he went there and he presented his stance. And I asked him point blank, why are you still a Democrat when you know all these things? And he just said it out loud. He says, my principles guide me. And it's not going to deter me, but he still believes in the old Democratic Party, I guess, that was presented him when he was young and when his family was, headstrong into the Democratic Party. But these are things that we should keep in mind. And and about Tony Ada, it just amazes me because. I mean, if you look what he did with the problems with the hospital, he parked that Hertz in front of the legislature, thinking that gimmick would get people to move. I wonder if he would do the same thing with the gas prices. Is he going to park Hertz in front of the gas station, hoping that would lower the gas prices of Guam? So, you got to weigh these things, whether people are up to the task, whether they're up for the next position. I agree with you totally in what you said. I caught the tail end of what you said about Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio, former Lieutenant Governor. And, and we mustn't forget, he's the one that signed that bill that allowed the race to occur.
The one she made, the one Pat 10, yeah.
Yeah, because Governor Cowell was off island. So, yeah, there's a lot of things we need to think. Now, about Chris Duenas' bill, you speak often about the Overton window. And I think here in Guam, when it comes to abortion, the Overton window is always there. Because there's still a firm belief, I think, in the core of our public that abortions are wrong. The problem is when it comes up to the election, it's sort of like buried in the back end. Because like Frenchie said, like Tim Rohr said, if we are this island of faith and we're mostly Catholic, there's no way that Lou would have been elected, even with all the problems that Ray was going to. But there's another issue, because the only thing that was going through the media at that time was the Glock party, brought up famously by Chris Barnett. And as far as whether or not...
Hey, Jack.
Yeah.
It's time for me to issue them immortal words. Good talking to you, Jack.
All right.
Here we go. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A wildfire surges in Arizona. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Hundreds of people in the path of a fast-moving wildfire near Flagstaff, Arizona. Evacuate as Coconino County declares an emergency. The tunnel fire already destroying 24 homes and burning more than 6,000 acres. The sheriff says the fire's moving so fast that many of his deputies were in danger while they helped evacuate residents. Firefighters contending with gusts up to 50 miles an hour. Russia is pouring on the military might as it increases attacks in the eastern regions of Ukraine. President Zelensky vowing not to surrender and asking for more military aid.
If we get what some partners plan to hand over to Ukraine in the coming weeks right now, it will save the lives of thousands of people. The intensity of fire by Russian troops in the Kharkiv and the Donbass and in the Dnipropetrovsk region has increased significantly.
The Biden administration plans to send more artillery.
There's obviously more money we can provide from the approved drawdown package, and the specifics of that are being worked through with the Department of Defense and our national security team.
Press Secretary Jen Psaki also told reporters aboard Air Force One the U.S. and allies could consider additional sanctions against Russia in the coming days. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Mass confusion among travelers at some airports over whether they have to wear masks. Some airlines, most of them, have dropped the requirement after a judge struck down the mandate, but airports like JFK and LaGuardia in New York still require them. The CDC, meantime?
The Justice Department says it's not going to appeal a federal judge's ruling out of Florida that strikes down the CDC's mask mandate on public transportation, unless CDC officials say they think it's necessary.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal. America is listening to Fox News.
From the
Fox News Podcasts Network. The Fox News Rundown. A contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day. Going far beyond the headlines. Tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
Alabama settles with several drug companies on a legal claim that they fueled the deadly opioid crisis in that state.
The settlement with U.S. companies Johnson & Johnson and McKesson Corp. And Britain's Endo International will pay the state $276 million. Alabama's settlement was not part of national opioid litigation accusing drug makers of using marketing that de-emphasized opioid dangers. Settling separately will get the state more money in a shorter time frame. Florida and West Virginia have ended similar suits out of court this year. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Elon Musk is scrambling to find investors for his attempted hostile takeover